passed yet, and so, oh yeah, we probably, Senator Morrison would be good. So as a result, I can't say anything about how we'll spend or what we'll do. But in about a week or so.
Good afternoon, folks. I got to stand on the thing. This is the short people box. Well, June. Hello, everyone. My name's Keith Ellison. I'm the Attorney General for the state of Minnesota. And about 4 years ago, Governor, we were in this room and we were announcing a lawsuit because we needed to stand up for and protect the lungs of the young people of the state of Minnesota. And I'm proud to tell you that we have done so. In late March, I stood up in open court and told the Hennepin County jury that big tobacco companies, Juul and Altria, they baited, they deceived, and they addicted a whole new generation of Minnesota kids. Also, that Juul and Altria could make money. They did this after Minnesotans had slashed the youth smoking rate down to the lowest level in a generation. And so, Governor, Lieutenant Governor, and many of us here, we came together a few years ago to announce the lawsuit that concluded a few days ago. But this has been a historic journey, and it's an honor and a privilege to be with all of you here today. 3.5 years ago, again, as we stood in this very room to announce that Minnesota was suing Juul for deceiving and defrauding Minnesotans, especially our children, about the harmful effects of their products. Juuling is what they called it. We followed in the footsteps of former Attorney General Skip Humphrey, who led the historic 1998 tobacco litigation in Minnesota. While some states also sued Juul and Altria, Minnesotans once again demonstrated leadership by being the first so far and the only state so far in this country to go to trial and to hold these tobacco companies accountable. And I want to thank every witness and every lawyer who presented, because they sent out a very clear message. We will not tolerate marketing nicotine products to children and youth in the state of Minnesota. After years of preparation, 3 weeks of trial where we demonstrated over and over how Juul and Altria knowingly deceived Minnesotans, and at the verge of closing arguments. We had pretty much wrapped up the whole case, Governor, and we were getting ready to do our closing arguments. We reached a historic settlement. People may not have known that while some of our lawyers, who you're going to meet, were in the courtroom making great arguments, we had another group working on settlement. Together, they brought forth an excellent settlement that you're going to hear about right now. The settlement contains 4 major wins for Minnesota. First, Juul and Altria will pay Minnesota $60.5 million over 7 years. Thank you. More than a third of that $60.5 million will be within 30 days, and more than 60% within a year, the first year. Once the legislature passes the bill that will dedicate these and any future settlement funds to tobacco mitigation and prevention, we can start putting these dollars to work where they're most needed in just 30 days. And I just want to say I'm so happy to see Senator Morrison here and all the other representatives, and Representative Herr, and all of the representatives. It's great to see you guys. Thought you guys were on the floor. But because that money will be put into an account to make sure it goes where it's supposed to go. Is that right, Representative? That's right. So thank you to Representative Herr and Senator Morrison and all of those who are working on that. Let me first put the $60.5 million into context. As you know, when you file a lawsuit, you set forth your damages. In this case, they were extensive. But you settle cases so that you can get finality, you can stop the appeals, the bankruptcy, and you can get certainty. And so the amount of our settlement is 2 to 4 times larger per person than any other settlement that has been filed in the United States at this point. So we have the largest per capita settlement in the country because we went to trial, because we fought. Minnesotan settlement is the largest per capita settlement precisely because we took Juul and Altria to trial. The amount of our settlement is larger than all of the money Juul made in Minnesota between 2015 and 2021. So if they got paid by selling deceptive and harmful products to our kids, we got all the money back. In other words, that's right. We have disgorged and extracted all of the money that they never should have earned in the first place. Secondly, we're getting more transparency, which is very important. In addition to the documents that Juul has disclosed in other settlements, we will now also disclose unique Minnesota documents. That's 10 million documents for reporters and journalists to parse through to help get more information out there to protect us into the future. We're going to have a lot of sunlight, and we encourage researchers and folks like that to pour through that because that's what it's there for. And another feature of this settlement, which separates the litigation from other states, is that for the first time, Altria will also disclose their internal documents. As you know, they dropped $12.8 billion on Juul so that they could supercharge their Juul's sales in Minnesota and around the country, and we need to know what they were up to as well, and we will. Document disclosure was a key part of the historic tobacco settlement 25 years ago, and I've pushed hard for it in nearly every settlement we've reached with opioid companies. We believe in putting the sunshine on this, and that's what we're doing right now. As the legendary Supreme Court Justice Louis Brandeis said more than a century ago, sunlight is the best disinfectant. Third, the settlement prohibits Juul from marketing and selling to children and young adults. It also requires Juul to accurately disclose nicotine content in their products. Fourth, the settlement provides that Juul and Altria will pay the state's costs and the attorney's fees in bringing this litigation. Landmark consumer protection litigation like this does cost money. Depositions, vendors, experts, discovery, you name it, it costs a lot of money, and there's no way around it. So this last feature is very important. Also, we had some of the best litigators in the country fighting on our side. I want you to meet them in a moment, but let me let you know that working under a contract that went through legislative oversight, our outside counsel from Robbins Kaplan and Zimmerman Reed did an outstanding work on a complicated case, and you will get to meet some of these lawyers, but I want them to know that we really appreciate them, and I hope you do too. And we also worked, they also worked at a steep discount, a very steep discount, so we're grateful for that. In this settlement, Juul and Altria are paying both our litigation and attorney's fees, as I said. The fact that Minnesota went to trial not only ensured that we got the highest per capita settlement in the country, it helped other states who settled with Juul while Minnesota was in trial to get higher amounts of money. So several of these states settled in the middle of our trial. So as they're seeing the witnesses come out, they're like, uh-oh. And so we were in a position to help them as well, which is good, because we want to protect not just Minnesota kids, but all kids. And so this matters a lot. The settlement matters. We were the only state willing to take this battle to trial and hold the bad actors accountable. It sends a message that you cannot get away with this. we will put you in front of a Minnesota jury, and you can take your chances. My office will continue to do its part to protect kids from getting hooked on these harmful products. And this is a notice to all companies looking to addict kids. If you try to do this in Minnesota, not only are we going to sue you, we're going to take you to court and hold you accountable, and you're going to pay. So I really am looking forward to hearing the governor's comments. But I just have one little page to have to take care of. I'd like to thank each of the 11 witnesses who presented, including Dr. Hurt, Dr. Griffiths, Laura Olvin, who I think is even here somewhere. I don't know where she is. Oh yeah, there she is. Dr. Olvin, you did a wonderful job from Minnesota Department of Health. This was a collaborative effort with the state and the AG's office who are here today. I'd like to thank all of the attorneys and staff who touched this case in the Attorney General's office and outside counsel. While there are too many of them to name all of them because they really are an army, there's some that I want to mention specifically. Deputy Attorney General James Kennedy and his Assistant Attorney General Eric Maloney and Adam Welly. Please wave your hand, guys. Also, Assistant Attorney General Mike Goodwin and Megan McKenzie, two great litigators. And here are two fierce fighters for justice from Robbins Kaplan, Tara Sutton and Munir Megji, who are here today. You're going to hear from them. And also working tirelessly also was Carolyn Anderson, June Hoydell, and Badad Sedaji from Zimmerman Reed. Thank you all very much. I'd like to thank Judge Lori Miller, who ran a wonderful courtroom and did an excellent job, and she represented the judiciary of our state very well. I'd also like to thank all the courtroom staff, including Judge Miller's clerk and court reporters. And finally, I'd like to thank the jury. Even though the case never got in their hands, their attentiveness through all elements of this matter was really critical. They were excellent and a perfect example of how to make justice work. And so with that, let me introduce two of the most fierce fighters for young people and children, not only in Minnesota, but in the United States. Governor, maybe even the world, you know. Governor Walz, everybody.
It is a great day. I'm so proud of Minnesota as governor, but this one feels very personal as the father of a 16-year-old. And knowing that a lot of this work was done by some young people you're going to hear from over many years. But Attorney General, you have certainly earned your tagline today as the people's lawyer, understanding that this is the hardcore work that an Attorney General office does to protect the citizens of Minnesota on so many fronts, and that's exactly what they did in partnership with these great lawyers who stepped up to do that work. I want to thank, as you said again, our legislative champions who are here. The Attorney General noted there's so many here. That's because they sleep in this room. So they get up for an hour or two after their little bit of sleep at night. But want to thank them for the vision of making sure that they worked. And I think it was a very important thing the Attorney General said. These contracts and how this was worked was over with legislative oversight. And I'm going to note that we're going to be prepared over the next 72 hours or so to make sure that we are fully funding the Attorney General office so this type of work can continue to go on. So look, this is a pretty simple case of that the jury was going to get it. They settled because they knew where this was going. These products were marketed at our young people. The scientific and the health data is clear. A lot of work, and you're going to hear from folks who stood here 25 years ago and took on big tobacco. As you heard say, we were at a historic low, and in fact, we were one of the lowest places in the entire country. And I would argue that we were within a decade or two of eliminating smoking almost in its entirety and nicotine addiction amongst our young. That's how close we got. And they're smart. They pivoted to a new product. They marketed it in a very deceptive way, and we have a whole generation of kids got hooked this way. So just to be very clear, we got more work to do. This gives us an awful lot of tools to do that. As the Attorney General said when we talked about this, there was making sure there were on many fronts that we won, both in a settlement that is financially substantial enough to make a big difference, but also in getting this data out there, making sure folks are able to continue on, and then send a chilling effect to these folks that you're not going to do these in these products. If you're an adult, they're managed, they're regulated in a way that you can make your choices, not to our high schools. And I just have to say, back in 2019, back in the before times when we were first elected, we were out in schools doing roundtables with student advocates who were telling the stories of telling us exactly what this was going to do and asking, and this team then picked that up, went with it, and we stand here today on a historic settlement. So just a deep debt of gratitude to everyone who's looking out for our children, a deep debt of gratitude to the professionals who make this happen, the partnership, and then, of course, the leadership of the Attorney General and his team. We are grateful to you, Attorney General Ellison, and as you often hear from this, the Lieutenant Governor talks about working at Children's Defense Fund and bringing Mama Bear energy to issues that affect our kids. She's bringing it on this one. Lieutenant Governor Flanagan.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. What a powerful and great day. Knowing that we are finally holding Juul accountable for the harm they caused on so many of our young people. And I want to echo some of the things that the Attorney General talked about, where we knew that we were making progress against commercial tobacco use for our young people. A decade or so ago, I worked very closely with Clearway in organizing in communities, especially around the use of commercial tobacco use in Native communities. We were making incredible progress. This felt like a scary setback, and now we are moving forward, making sure that our young people are protected. As a mom of a fourth grader, I think about this all the time. How we make sure that we are building a future for our children that is safe, where they can reach their full potential and they can be healthy. They can be healthy doing it. And to put it simply, our children and our young people deserve better. Juul used predatory behavior to hook kids, teens, and young people across the state into using and becoming addicted to nicotine. We heard firsthand back in 2019 the devastating impacts of nicotine addiction and e-cigarette use that had on our young people, on their academics, their physical and mental health, and their overall well-being. And as adults, we have a responsibility to keep our children safe. Allowing deceptive and harmful marketing to target young children is unacceptable, and we are not going to tolerate it here in Minnesota. That's that Mama Bear energy. I'm so proud of the work of the Attorney General's office and for all of those involved for stepping up to hold these folks accountable. And thank you especially to the young people who shared your story to inspire action. Claire, we are here today because of you. When we met you in Hopkins High School and you shared your story and you were vulnerable in a way that allowed us to protect thousands and thousands of children in Minnesota, thank you for your courage. And thank you, Katie, for your leadership as well, stepping out there and telling the truth. It really, really matters. So today we're celebrating this settlement as a victory for the health and safety of the future of our state, but we know that the work continues to help our young people who are suffering and struggling with addiction. So it is a good day, and we know that more work remains ahead of us, but it's good work if you can get it, right? And so with that, I would like to introduce Tara Sutton.
Thank you, Attorney General Ellison, the Governor, the Lieutenant Governor. It has been just a great privilege to represent the state of Minnesota in once again protecting the children of Minnesota against big tobacco. You know, I can't help but remember it was just basically 25 years ago today that the state held a similar press conference where the Attorney General then, Skip Humphrey, announced that Minnesota had achieved a historic settlement against big tobacco for the catastrophic damages that they had caused against the citizens of Minnesota and around the world. As a member of that trial team, and I was at that press conference, I remember vividly when Attorney General Humphrey said, "We won." Minnesota won that day. And Minnesota was the only state in the nation that had the courage and the conviction to take big tobacco to trial. And we won that day. Yeah. And I can't help but mention Dr. Hurt, who's directly behind me. He was our lead expert in the tobacco case. He withstood almost a week of cross-examination by the tobacco industry, and we still won. We won because we were telling the truth. And, well, here we are 25 years later, and we have won once again. Once again, the Attorney General had the courage to take on the new generation of big tobacco, and its name was Juul, and its benefactor was Altria. And so now we can announce again that we won. Again, Minnesota is the only state in the country to take Juul and Altria to trial. And because of that, Minnesota can announce that per capita, we have received the largest settlement to date of any of the states in the country. So at Robbins Kaplan, I'm privileged. This is really a personal thing at our law firm because we were at the forefront in partnering with the state 25 years ago, and when we saw what Juul had done to erase the gains that the state had made, we thought we have to get involved in this again. And it was a real privilege to work on behalf of the state of Minnesota to help achieve this settlement and to help put money to good work to stop what's going on with respect to vaping in this state. And as a partner from Robbins Kaplan, and I'm very proud on behalf of our firm to have the chance to do this work. And I want to introduce my partner. He's my longtime partner. He's right behind me, Munir Megji. We've been partners and friends for decades, and he was my co-patriot and leader in this case. And he wants to say a few comments about what this litigation meant to our firm and the chance for us to do this on behalf of the state. Thank you.
Thank you, Tara. Attorney General, Governor, Lieutenant Governor, members of the legislature, and other honored guests. My name is Munir Megji. I'm a partner at the Robbins Kaplan law firm, and I was one of the lead trial lawyers along with Tara and June and Badad in this case. And I remember standing here in 2019 when the Attorney General announced and the Governor and Lieutenant Governor announced we were bringing this case, and how important that was for Minnesota and how proud I was of the state. But personally, as with the other parents up here, at that time in 2019, I had 3 children who were in high school and middle school, and I was able to see firsthand the harm in our schools that vaping and addicting a generation of youth was doing. And these tobacco companies running, to paraphrase the words of the Attorney General, the same game under a new name. And it was meaningful to me personally and professionally to be able to represent the state in the courtroom. Because in the courtroom, Juul didn't take responsibility for their actions. Instead, Juul decided they would blame the state. They decided they'd blame the Department of Health for not doing enough, that they'd blame educators for not doing enough, that they'd blame the legislature and our elected officials for not passing the laws to prevent youth from vaping, when in fact, it was Juul and Altria's conduct that brought these products into our schools. And we were able to put on the evidence in the courtroom, from the Department of Health, from educators, about all the work the state was doing to keep a new generation from being addicted. And it's meaningful to me personally and professionally to play a part in helping give the state additional resources to protect our children going forward. So, Attorney General, I thank you for the opportunity to partner with you on behalf of myself and the law firm. Now let me introduce June Hoidel from Zimmerman Reed, our partner in this process.
Thank you, Munir. Good afternoon. I'm June Hoidel. I'm a partner at the Zimmerman Reed law firm here in Minneapolis, and I had the privilege of being on the trial team in this case. There were so many of us who stood in the same room back in 2019 when this case was first filed. And I remember standing in the back of the room, and it was a packed room, and Governor Walz and the Attorney General announced that the state of Minnesota had filed this case. And I remember that the packed room erupted in applause. As a litigator, that's not usually the reaction I get on cases I work on. So I knew at that moment that this case was a meaningful one and an important one for the state of Minnesota. And what an absolute privilege it has been these last 4 years to work on this case. I want to thank everyone at my firm, Zimmerman Reed, who worked tirelessly on this trial, and those who supported us throughout the way. And I'm incredibly grateful for the partnership with our excellent co-counsel at the Robbins Kaplan Law Firm, and the opportunity to pursue this case under the exceptional leadership of our Attorney General and the fine team of lawyers at his office. Several months ago, as I was working on this case late at night at my house, my son interrupted me, and he started telling me about kids who knew his age who were vaping in bathrooms in school. And that struck me because my son is 12 years old. He's in middle school. Right now in our state, there are middle schoolers who are vaping in school. And they're risking their health, and they're risking a life of addiction to nicotine. And that's why my law firm got involved in this case. We knew that this was a fight against big tobacco companies and all of their resources, and it would be a tough fight. And it was. But General Ellison brought this case, and we all signed on for the long haul. Because even though it wasn't the easy thing to do, it was the right thing to do for our state, our communities, our kids, even our kids as young as those in middle school. So thank you for the opportunity. And next, I'd like to introduce my partner at my law firm, Bedad Sadeghi.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to talk just very briefly about what happened before trial, because there was a long road to get to even to where we were at trial. So today is the capstone of a hard-fought 3 weeks of trial, and that trial was a capstone on a hard-fought 3 years of litigation, during which the defendants, the tobacco companies, tried to dismiss our case and get rid of the state's legal claims and get them thrown out of court no less than 4 times. They also tried to prevent our experts from testifying at trial. And the defendants also tried to, as Mr. Megji mentioned, the defendants also tried to deflect responsibility and blame everyone but themselves in this case. But at each and every turn, they were unsuccessful. And our legal team prevented Juul and Altria from their efforts to derail this case. Now, due to the efforts of everybody standing up here and some people not standing up here, we put Minnesota's case in a strong position going into trial, and we were able to conduct a trial that revealed Juul and Altria's wrongful conduct to the jury and to the public. And I want to say one more thing, which is that Minnesotans should absolutely be proud of our state, led by the Attorney General, because we were the tip of the spear among states in taking enforcement action against these tobacco companies on behalf of Minnesota's kids. So thank you very much. And I'd like to introduce Claire.
Hi, I'm Claire. I'm 20 years old, and I was here 4 years ago when the lawsuit was first announced. And I'm so happy that the money we now have obtained is going to be allocated across Minnesota to be able to help youth and young people like me who were or are addicted to nicotine. And I'm hopeful that these resources can and will do good in Minnesota. But I want to make it clear that this is not the last piece of the puzzle. Addiction at its root is a mental health crisis. Addiction is not a choice. It's grasping for straws to cope in this world. And quitting is halfway there. It's not the end. I'm thankful to Minnesota, to Governor Walz, to General Attorney, as a state that we have fought for this to combat nicotine addiction, and I'm hopeful that we're going to make more strides, because this is not an end. It's a new beginning. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Katie Johnson. I'm 21 years old. I hit my first vape when I was 13 and started consistently vaping when I was 14 when I bought my first Juul. Many of my friends started around the same time, and reflecting back on this now that I'm older and my prefrontal cortex is a bit more developed, yeah, it's wild to think about the number of such young people using such an addictive drug. It was so normalized. Mostly because many of us were so young and we didn't understand what addiction was and how nicotine could affect our health, but also because we were wrapped up in the fun of it. The fruity flavors were really enticing to us at such a young age. And I think that's the main issue, because if vapes were tobacco flavored, this never would have been a youth epidemic. This was no accident. It was predatory. It went from no one vaping to everyone using it. I first realized I was really addicted when my vaping habits persisted, despite the health concerns that were arising for me. I was having panic attacks and feeling like vaping was really affecting my lungs because I felt like I couldn't breathe properly, but I would still be vaping. It was really scary, but what was even scarier was the thought of quitting. I had been vaping since I was 13, and it felt so ingrained in my everyday life that I was unsure who I would be without it. And that might sound ridiculous, but that's how big it was to me. As I was growing and developing, it became a way for me to emotionally regulate myself and deal with the stressors many adolescents are going through in this world. And to quit would mean to rewire the neural pathways I had created to navigate life since I was a young teenager. After many attempts to quit over the years, I finally went all in at the age of 20 and have never looked back. Learning about the predatory marketing strategies of companies like Juul has been my main motivator. So my focus now is on my friends who are struggling to stop vaping. Many of them are people I started vaping with when we were 13, 14. Just in the past week, I've had 2 dear friends come to me and say they're worried about their health and how vaping is affecting them, but they don't know how to stop. And it's hard for me to know how to help them. It's such a personal journey and decision one has to make for themselves, but thankfully there are resources. The Minnesota legislature is expected to pass a bipartisan bill that will dedicate the Juul settlement funds to youth prevention and treatment. This settlement money will hopefully address the lasting impact of the youth vaping epidemic and big tobacco's unjust targeting of vulnerable populations, including young people. Funds will help young people who are now addicted to get the support they need to quit vaping. Hopefully, programs like these will really start to make a difference in the extensive amounts of lives affected by this epidemic. Lastly, thank you to the Minnesota Attorney General's office for holding Juul and Altria accountable for the devastation that they've caused myself, my friends, and so many people in my generation. Young people and vulnerable populations really needed someone to take a stand and say no more for the things that susceptible minds might not be able to say no to. So, thank you.
So that's it. We can take a few questions, and be happy to do so. I'll recognize folks. Yeah.
How will you decide where this money goes and specifically what it will be used for?
Well, so we have the benefit of having some wonderful legislators.
You're watching Fox 9 All Day.
Thanks so much for joining us for Fox 9 All Day. I'm Tim Blotz. Our top story this afternoon, St. Paul police and fire are investigating a suspected arson at a mosque in St. Paul. Now, this happened at the Oromo American Tawhid Islamic Center. This is at the corner of Dale Street and Fuller Avenue. Someone called the report flames at about 8:45 this morning. No one was in the building at the time. In fact, it was under renovation. But St. Paul Mayor Chris Carter says this is an attack on everyone.
We've said it before, and I hate that we have to say it again, but we will say it again and again and again. We do not tolerate attacks against our communities of faith. This is a mosque that was attacked today, but make no mistake about it, our communities of faith were attacked today. Because one of the things that I'm proudest of in St. Paul is that we know that we live in that web of mutuality.
Now, the St. Paul Fire Department says they found evidence that this was an incendiary fire. The Federal Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms has been called in to help with this investigation. Mayor Carter says the police department